What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast from the Action Network and Fantasy Labs. I'm your host, Chris Raybon, and this is your NFL Week 12 player projections episode. And who better to join me to talk NFL player projections than one of the greatest, if not the greatest to ever do it, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, how's it going?
Pretty good. There's 6 teams on bye this week, which I absolutely love. I always talk about like these heavy bye weeks helping us out because there's 3 fewer matchups to project this week, which just allows us more time to dive into each matchup. I always feel like there isn't enough time every week to dive into all the matchups. So when we have like this many teams on bye, I feel like it's easier to like dive into matchups. Plus, with like season-long DFS, we have to dive deeper in the player pool, which I love. I think we thrive in that. So I love that it's 16 bye week this week.
Yeah, that's the same reason. I know you like Thursday Night Football. Like, that's the same reason I don't like Thursday Night Football, is because I always feel like, man, I wish I just had a little more time. Like last week, if I had a little more time to actually bet some of the things I was projecting, I would have just taken all of the commander receiver unders. But I just kind of was like, all right, well, it's Thursday. I got to project the rest of these things. So,
right.
Yeah, it's tough, but we are going to go through our top 5 at each position. Guys we're high and low on, of course, and then we'll throw out a prop. And last week we had some fun ones. Jared Goff with our quarterback yardage prop. I think he doubled it.
Yeah.
So, Stay tuned for that. And before we get started here and talk all things NFL, a reminder that Sean and I have teamed up with DraftKings, and they have a new way to play fantasy basketball and win some serious cash prizes. It's called DraftKings Pick 6. Sean, you and I both love watching the NBA when we have the time during the NFL season, but it really picks up around Christmas time for us. But we are already playing Pick 6 on DraftKings for the NBA. And for anyone that's interested in playing too, here's how it works. You pick 2 to 6 NBA players and choose if they'll have more than or less than of a stat, stuff like points, rebounds, assists, points, rebounds, and assists, points and assists. All the combinations. It's peer-to-peer. You lock in a lineup and you compete against your opponents to win huge cash prizes. And Sean, one of my favorite strategies is to go with point, rebound, and assist less than for guys that I think are going to get in foul trouble. How about you?
That's a good one. I love attacking the assist ones, specifically looking at their recent, potential assist to assist conversion rate. So I like to buy low or sell high on players based on that. So if a player has converted 12 of the last 12 potential assists, that's just their teammates bailing them out, making every single shot. I might look for them to go less than their assists the next game. Plus, that's a situation where the market will probably be all over their more than anyway. So it's a great way to kind of buy low, sell high on players, and also get leverage against everyone else playing.
Yeah, I really like the market aspect of it. DraftKings Pick 6. It's a really fun game. So if you want to play too, just go and download the DraftKings Pick 6 app. And right now, new customers can play $5 on their very first pick set and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. You just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use promo code FLEX6 at signup. That's FLEX and the number 6 at signup on the DraftKings Pick 6 app. All right, let's get into our Week 12 player projections. We'll start with the quarterback position. Who do you have in your top 5, Sean Kerner, for week number 12?
I've got Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I got Lamar, Hurts, Daniels, Herbert, and Anthony Richardson, baby.
There you go.
Here. He was pretty much drafted like it. We talked about on our waiver pod, drafted as the QB6 for much of the summer. But I really like this matchup indoors. And remember, it's a few outdoor games this week with some weather. So that is something you want to take into consideration, especially in tiebreaker situations. Obviously, Sean and I are factoring all that into our projections and rankings as is. So be sure to check those out. But who are you high on at QB this week?
I'm high on Justin Herbert. Again, he's my QB4. Was high on him last week, and he went off again for almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 65 rushing yards. Again, he's been tapping in his rushing upside a lot more now that he's finally healthy. He was dealing with injury after injury, it seemed like, at the beginning of the season. So he's rushed for 30 more yards in 3 of the last 4 games. Has also thrown for over 275 yards and multiple touchdowns in 3 of the last 4. And this is just a great matchup here against the Ravens where, he's probably going to be asked to drop back even more. And it's a pass funnel matchup. So, again, he's a top 5 option this week. And going forward, with him tapping his rushing upside, he's back in the QB1 mix, which it seemed like for the longest time he was outside of, the top 20, kind of an afterthought. But lately, he's back to being, the top 5 sort of upside quarterback he's always been.
Yeah, and on our waiver wire pod for week 12, which is out now, we were talking about how every year around this time, most guys are banged up and some guys just look like men among boys out there, just athletically speaking. And I think Herbert, you have to add him to that list for the way he's scrambling. I mean, we didn't see this pretty much his entire career. We knew he could do it, but he's legitimately breaking ankles out there with some of these runs over these last couple of weeks. And he's putting up, with Lamar Jackson totals on the ground now. I mean, you get to, you get past, 30 yards and you're starting to do something with your legs as a quarterback. And yeah, he's not missing much with the arm either. So it's been a long time coming, but looks like we're finally back. And shouts to Greg Roman for realizing what he had there and kind of adjusting his game. Cause that's something I think we were all worried about it in the fantasy community. Just was Justin Herbert going to kind of be trapped in this Roman offense? And he was for a couple of weeks, but I think it had more to do with just everyone's health and whatnot. And now that guys are clicking, it looks really good. And speaking of guys who, long time coming, I already mentioned it, Anthony Richardson, but I'll go deeper into why I'm high on him this week against the Detroit Lions. So we've seen quarterbacks take a little bit of time off, come back, and just look a lot better. I mean, Bryce Young is like the most recent example. Now, Richardson is so much better than Young, but Young looked competent, and he didn't look competent before. And Richardson, he looked excellent, after that little hiatus where he got benched against the Jets, 20 of 30, 272 passing yards, no issues with the completion percentage, no issues with turnovers, touchdown, no picks, and a couple on the ground, including the game winner. He had an 88% on-target throw rate, which is top 10 percentile among all quarterback starts this season. I thought that he was making great decisions. It's in terms of, okay, am I going to scramble? I don't think he scrambled once, as a matter of fact. He got the ball out where it needed to go, read the field. I thought the play calling was good. You started to see, easy completions. You still had his signature deep completions. He's still giving you the rushing upside. And now he has to go do it against a team that can actually get a first down before there's 3 minutes left in the second half, in the second quarter. Because the Lions are not going to be like the Jets, who just kind of took half the game off on offense. So this could be a massive shootout. I mean, the Lions could put up 40 or 50. This is an indoor game. And Richardson did all this last week without his left tackle, Bernard Raymond, with Jonathan Taylor really providing nothing in terms of efficiency, 24 carries, 57 yards. So this is a pretty high upside spot, even though Detroit has been good in pass defense. I love some of the guys they got back there like Branch and whatnot, but this is kind of how you have to, beat Detroit. You're not going to really be able to run on them with the traditional run game, but 5 quarterbacks that have faced Detroit have gone for at least 29 rushing yards. 4 of those 5 over 34 rushing yards. So this, and then the explosives, because the Lions are going to be able to match you on the other side. So this could be a big shootout. The total is over 50, which is rare in 2024, especially for a non-primetime game because it's less public money and whatnot. So this is a pretty decent bet for a shootout. Love that we are going to finally get some Anthony Richardson in the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks, even though he didn't live up to his draft capital. All right. What about quarterback that you're low on for week 12?
I'm a lower on Brock Purdy this week at Green Bay. And last year, I feel like I talked about a few times just how sneaky his rushing upside is. He just didn't really tap into that his first couple seasons, but we've seen that this year. Had another solid 40 yards and a touchdown with his legs last week. So that's 4 rushing touchdowns and 25 or more rushing yards in 3 of the last 4 games. But I think he's going to start to dial back on that a little bit with Christian McCaffrey back. I feel like one of the reasons he was scrambling more is he didn't have his safety valve and just dumping it off to Christian McCaffrey. Plus, Purdy's dealing with this shoulder injury. Can't trust a thing Shanahan says, so we're going to have to just monitor this closely. Hopefully he's okay, but probably another reason for him to take it a little bit easier and stay in the pocket more this week. Plus, Christian McCaffrey doesn't have a touchdown yet this year, but they're going to come over these next several weeks, and that's going to start to take away from Purdy's touchdown upside. So a lot of different little things why I'm a little bit lower on Purdy this week. So he's my QB 13, more of a high-end QB 2 option this week than QB 1.
We've seen Christian McCaffrey play quarterback before. Purdy's look like the better runner than McCaffrey. Maybe they should just switch it up.
Just switch? Yeah.
Let
interesting.
McCaffrey be the QB and Purdy be the safety valve. Hey, I mean, Jawan Jennings looks better than Deebo Samuel too, right? Everything's kind of switched up on the 49ers this year. So, and who knows? It could work. But, Purdy is my QB. I think it's 11. So I'm kind of right there with you. Yeah. Usually he's in my top 5 or 6. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's my QB 13. So right there with you. Right there.
Nice.
And there could be some weather in that game too. Again.
Yeah, rain, right?
Yeah, we're up to week 12. So you got to start checking those weather forecasts for outdoor games. And it's not just like weather precipitation is not going to be a major issue, but it's when it starts combining with wind or even just wind alone. And, you have kickers in this game, but the wind can also affect the deep passing game. And both of the quarterbacks in this game do rely quite a bit on the deep passing game in Jordan Love and Brock Purdy. So definitely something to monitor the weather in Green Bay, Wisconsin for the Niner and Packer matchup. I'm low on another game that a quarterback in another game that could have some weather. That's Russell Wilson. He's the ECR QB 15, and he's just outside my top 20. I don't think you want to go to the well with him this week. He had a pretty underwhelming performance against the Ravens from fantasy purposes. Obviously, from real life purposes, it's just another win for those Steelers. It's a dog against the Baltimore Ravens. However, short turnaround, potential gusts of wind up to 30 to 40 miles per hour in Cleveland on Thursday night this week. Also, you're just not going to kind of know about the statuses of some other, potential streaming quarterbacks or, guys on the fringe. I just don't think you want to lock Wilson in, to your lineup on a Thursday in a bad weather spot. The total is 36. It's a divisional matchup and very unlikely to shoot out. I think even with, Jameis on the other side, I still think it's a low probability shootout. If we know how these Steelers tend to play on the road with Tomlin, the under has been pretty profitable ever since he became their coach. And Russ has been under 30 pass attempts in 3 of 4 starts with the Steelers. He's been efficient, but he's also been getting into some lucky spots. Like that Mike Williams touchdown, for example. Like that's Jalen Warren should have had a touchdown on the previous possession, but he fumbles at the 1 yard line. And so now the Steelers got to come back. So, I don't think Wilson should be near fantasy lineups this week. He's averaging 233.5 passing yards, just 3.5 rushing yards. And now they're talking about potentially working in Justin Fields more. We saw that at the end of the game in Pittsburgh. He ran with a little option kind of play around the end to seal the game. But I think he might be involved even, more than that this week, or at least that's the danger based on what we're hearing from the coaches. So a lot of reasons to fade Russ this week, in my opinion. All right. Quarterback prop last week. I think it was Goff over 224.5, and almost doubled it. So let's see if we can get somebody to double or do something interesting this week. I'm gonna go. Let's go with CJ Stroud. Got that long touchdown called back because of course he did last week. Had a very odd season because sometimes he looks great and sometimes he looks like he's just overthinking it out there in the pocket. So, and the numbers really haven't been there for him. So I'm going to go with overall quarterback fantasy finish this week. Let's go over under 14.5.
I'll go, I guess, inside the top 14, so under 14.5, just with 6 teams on bye.
Where do you have him ranked? Just curious.
And Tommy Cutlets now starting. I have him 12th. Where do you have him ranked?
I have him 15th, so it's kind of on that fringe. I have like Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, CJ Stroud, Sam Darnold from 12 to 16. And I feel like all those guys have massive upside, but also kind of like question marks. So it's a tough tier, in my opinion, to sort out. So we're just kind of curious as to what you're doing with Stroud because he's been disappointing. But again, everyone saw him get that touchdown call back as well. So it's like,
it's a good line. But again, there's 6 teams on bye. Tommy DeVito's now starting. Russell Wilson, like you mentioned, with that, potential weather, he and Winston, it might be tougher for them to crack the top 14. Cooper Rush, again, you mentioned we might see Trey Lance. Gardner Minshew might get benched for the 4th time this year. I'm still waiting to get benched for just 2 more games to help me out on that season-long prop. But there's just some shaky guys below. But I agree. I'm lower on Stroud as well. So I'm not like super confident about this, but I'll take inside the top 14 for this week.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I love CJ Stroud. It's just more I'm having a tough time projecting him because and also the Titans defense is kind of hard to get a read on too because I think they've outperformed expectations, but they're getting more and more banged up each and every week. So it's just an odd spot all around this Titan Texans game. That's when I really you talk about we have extra time. That's when I'm really looking forward to digging into because there are already some interesting things I see there. Gibbons is going to be out for the Titans. Bryce Oliver is a guy who's every time he's on the field, he makes a catch. Westbrook Akine keeps rolling. Getting on a tangent here, but I say that to say you got CJ Stroud inside the top 14 this week.
Yeah, I lost on his passing yard prop last night. I had the under 240. I had a parlay where I had, and again, I said, I'm not betting against CJ Stroud. I'm just betting against Cooper Rush going off. And that's kind of what led to it. But I had a parlay on our new Parlay Express account of Texans defensive score, Joe Mixon over his rushing yards. I almost made that like an alt, like 110 yards, and CJ Stroud's under passing yards. Unfortunately, got the fumble 6 way later in the game after CJ Stroud had already cleared it. But if that happened a little bit earlier, would have had a shot there. But Slowick ran a air raid offense for the first 3.5 quarters of that game, which was nice to see finally, but not good for my prop.
Yeah, I think they actually mentioned that he was like, I have to cut it loose. So that's another thing that's interesting about this matchup with the Titans. I think it could go a lot of ways. And, it's almost like a post-hype kind of situation now because I think, now it's not even Nico's first game back anymore. So, really, really interesting spot. And, we'll check you out to see if you have any more picks or I do on that Parlay Express account as well. But let's get into running back. Top 5, week 12, we got
Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, and Kyron Williams.
I got Mixon, McCaffrey, Barkley, Achane, and King Henry.
Nice.
Who are you high on?
I'm high on Najee Harris this week at Cleveland. Like we mentioned, we could see some snow here for Thursday Night Football, and which means we could see a big workload for Najee. it was at the end of their Week 18 win last year. Mike Tomlin said that they love to feed Najee when there's bad weather. Well, there might be bad weather here, so what better time than to feed Najee Harris? We're getting late in the season. You mentioned, teams are banged up. He is the most durable running back in the league, I would say. So even if he's dealing with ailments, he's still healthier than everybody out there. Plus, Jaylen Warren, he was iffy last week with that back injury. He still played well, had a lot of touches, but they had elevated Jonathan Ward before the game, which was a hint that maybe they weren't so confident that Warren was going to be able to suit up. So it's a short week, Thursday night. It's going to be freezing cold. He's dealing with a back injury. Might not make sense to have him rotating in and out as much. So I think we could just see Najee heavy, like entire drives here. So this is a week. If you have Najee Harris, fire him up. He's a mid-range RB2, but I think even for like props, things like that, he's somebody I'm going to be looking to attack here.
Yeah, I think what really helps Najee is, you said Jaylen Warren played well. That might have been one of the first times all year that he played well. Najee's out playing him this year, and I think going into the year, a lot of people were kind of down on Najee, felt like Warren could even overtake him, and that, probably has a lot to do with Warren's injuries too, but hasn't come to fruition. Najee always gets better this time of year. They not even just weather, they just tend to feed him at this time of the year when guys, the rest of the league is banged up and you're just getting this, monster coming at you each and every play. So I could see a Najee, run to kind of close out the season. So I like that you're getting ahead of this on the Thursday night matchup that could just have a lot more running, period, than the Steelers, even though they haven't been super pass heavy by any stretch with Russell Wilson. We know they don't mind going 40, 45 runs if they can. And I don't think they're going to get, much resistance from the Browns offense to keep up against that Steeler D. So yeah, like Najee as well. And kind of lower on Jaylen Warren as well. I just don't think he's looked great most of the year. And I think now that Patterson's back, it kind of complicates things for Warren a little bit more than it does for Najee. And I don't think that goal line fumble a couple of weeks ago helped, quite honestly. All right, I am high on Brian Robinson Jr. this week. Big home favorite, -10 Washington. Long layoff after playing on Thursday, which is important for a guy like Robinson Jr., who was coming off an injury. Really has been on and off the injury report for what seems like the past 6 or 7 weeks. So I think this is a good spot for him, extended rest. And Washington has been struggling for the past few games. Probably part of it is Jaden Daniels' rib injury. Part of it is some tougher matchups. But now you're back in a familiar spot as a big favorite. So this is a game script that favors Robinson Jr. over Austin Eckler, who's more of the pass catching back. And this Dallas defense has just been getting shredded on the ground. Even though they got Micah Parsons back, teams aren't really needing to get into these must-pass situations. Dallas is not a big threat to get out to a huge lead and put you in those situations. So I think this is a pretty high floor, high ceiling spot for Brian Robinson Jr. And every time this guy steps on the field, it seems like he scores a touchdown for these Washington Commanders. So really like him. And he's been playing well in the passing game too when he gets the opportunity. I just think he's playing well overall. And this big physical guy who's finally getting healthy on a team that, could dominate in some areas. I think he might be another guy that we start looking at like, oh man, he's starting to look really good out there because he's looked pretty good most of the year and he's been banged up. So I think this is a good time to get Brian Robinson back in lineups. He was kind of on that fringe the last few weeks, more of a RB2 flexed in the mid-20s. But this week, he is my RB number 12 to open the week. Dallas 27th in DVOA against the run. All right, who are you low on at running back, Sean?
Kareem Hunt, but it's complicated. Last week I mentioned in my tiers piece that it might be a good time to sell high on Hunt if you can, obviously, because Isaiah Pacheco could return as soon as this week. Even if Pacheco returns this week, he's probably going to get eased back in. So with this matchup against Panthers, Hunt may still be able to provide RB3 flex value or even more in a great spot. And if Pacheco ends up getting ruled out, which could still happen, Hunt's going to be an RB1 option. So this is a mixed bag here, but just be on the lookout. If you've been banking on Kareem Hunt, like I have been in a couple of leagues the past few weeks, that could be coming to an end with Pacheco's return looming as soon as, this week potentially. The other guy I'm down on is DeAndre Swift. Tough matchup here against the Vikings, but he's been trending down subtly the past few weeks just because he hasn't been as efficient in some easier matchups of late. Plus his receiving usage is also, trending down. But last week, Roshan Johnson was mixing in on short yardage, even goal line situations, which is obviously going to eat into Swift's touchdown upside. So he has all these little subtle factors going against him. And now he has a really tough matchup against the Vikings. So this is a week where he's, a lower end RB2, but again, we have 6 teams on a bye this week. So that's a pretty low rank for him. He was able to cash in with a touchdown last week, but very concerning trend for him recently with the tough matchup. Who knows? Maybe you have some better options this week. Maybe not because so many teams are on bye. But he's the guy that's been kind of moving down my ranks week to week here.
Yeah, he's more of in that fringe RB2 spot, I think, this week because of, like you mentioned, just Johnson getting a lot of the goal line looks that could eat into his value because he's not always going to be able to rush for a long touchdown. Now, you want guys in your lineup who can do that, obviously, but Minnesota's also been really tough. A matchup against the run, number 1 in defensive DVOA against the run. So this is the toughest matchup. So, yeah, I think it's time to maybe get off the Swift train for at least this week until we see how the short yardage goal line kind of sorts itself out as well as the passing game. I'm rolling Gus Edwards. He is the RB34 in ECR, which surprised me a little bit because I know he had the game where he came back against the Titans, and for the first about 3.5 quarters, he was the Chargers' lead back. It wasn't until the last 2 drives of the game, which were essentially garbage time, where Dobbins overtook him and ended with a 5-carry lead. But Edwards still got 10 carries, and then he goes into the Cincinnati matchup, and he plays 11 snaps. I just don't think it's going to happen for Edwards because he's not getting the thing that I think was really key for him, and because he had played with Greg Roman before, so you assume that some of that touchdown equity, that goal line usage was going to carry over, but they keep taking him out of the game. He doesn't have a carry inside the 5 all year. Hassan Haskins has been the alternate short yardage back if it's not J.K. Dobbins staying in the game. So both of those guys, Dobbins and Haskins, have 4 carries inside the 5. Last week, you saw Edwards take it from the 17 to the 8, the 8 to the 4. Then Haskins comes in, takes it to the 1, gets stuffed. So he gets 2 carries in a row. And then Dobbins comes in and scores a touchdown. I don't know what's going on, but that's not good for Gus Edwards. It's like ever since Todd Monken decided not to hand him the ball against the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs when their run defense was their weakest link, Gus Edwards has never recovered from that, and he's missed time. They tried to make him a thing at the beginning of the year. 2 games in a row, he was the lead back, and then he kind of got hurt. Dobbins jumps him, and they try to do it again. And I was kind of surprised against the Titans that he was as involved as he was, but he just hasn't looked great. He's career low in yards after contact by a mile, career low in yards per carry, 54 carries already, none longer than 11 yards. So just a guy that I don't want, even in a flex spot. I think there are better options because he's also averaging 0.02 yards per route, not 0.2, 0.02. And that's kind of his forte. He's never really been a big pass catcher out of the backfield, but this could be a situation where it just continues to kind of fade out because he's going to be 30 next April. So even if he gets another game with double-digit carries, he's a guy I'm going to try to just avoid because I'm not seeing anything that's making me confident in him, being consistent in any type of way in this backfield at this point. All right, what are you doing for the running back prop?
Well, let's stick with this Chargers backfield. J.K. Dobbins, total rushing yards, just continues to play well, exceed expectations week in, week out. But this is a tough spot against his former team, so it's a revenge game, but this is a tough matchup for him on the ground. Curious where you have him projected, but I'm going to set his line at 50 and a half rushing yards here.
Ooh, that sounds, let's see, I think I have it right around there. Let's see what I got. But I agree, it's a tough spot. And when's the last time you had a double revenge game in the same backfield? Speaking of,
I don't think ever. This has to be a first. Yeah. Hayden Hurst revenge game too, but he'll be inactive. Just a lot of former Ravens on this Charger team. Offensive coordinator revenge game. Does that mean he's gonna like throw more or use these former Ravens running backs and running down their throat? Like, what's the angle there with the offensive coordinator revenge game?
I just, that's why I wanted to mention Edwards, because I don't want anyone to kind of get caught up in that narrative. If you are going to get caught up, I would rather it be with Dobbins, but I'm going to go under that. I actually have it about 11 and a half carries, 11 to 12 carries, about 45 rushing yards, because his efficiency against Baltimore, I have it, he's like not even at four per carry, I don't think so. Yeah, tough matchup. He has been getting by on some explosives, so he's another candidate for aggression, especially with the Chargers being more willing and just healthier to throw it around the yard now, and Herbert picking up some of the slack, with his legs as well. So both Charger running backs trending down, but I would much rather roll with Dobbins for any revenge-related, narratives, DFS plays, props, whatever it may be. I just think he looks a lot better out there. And I mean, that could end at any time. He's had terrible luck with injury, but at least he's still, technically more close to his athletic prime, whereas Gus, as I mentioned, he'll be 30. So I think Dobbins, if anything, could just separate more from Gus in the coming weeks. And he could potentially be a league winner because he's kind of been in those 20s lately too, in the ranks. Hasn't been up a ton, but he's been playing pretty well, or at least putting up pretty good numbers at the end of the day. And before we move on, here a quick announcement. Action Network is running back our annual Black Friday sale, offering our best price of the year on a year-long Action Pro subscription. If you're still on a Pro subscriber, visit actionnetwork.com/Black Friday, and you can get $40 off a year of Pro. Receive instant access to all of the picks and projections from myself, Sean Kerner, Stuckey, and the whole Action Network squad. That's actionnetwork.com/Black Friday for the best price of the year on Action Pro. Let's go to wide receiver. Who do you got in the top 5 for week 12 at wideout?
I got Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, and A.J. Brown.
I got Amon-Ra St. Brown number 1, Jefferson 2, A.J. 3, Tyreek Hill, and Cooper Kupp.
Nice.
Who are you high on at wide receiver?
I'm high on Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's my wide receiver, like around 15 by now. I know everybody that has him knows you got to start him at this point, but I had mentioned a couple weeks ago that I think we're actually witnessing his true breakout right now. And my comp for him last year was Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that's sort of his upside. That's kind of his skill set. And landing with the Seahawks was tough because they already have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Yeah. But even though DK Metcalf is back and looked excellent last week, Tyler Lockett's usage has really fallen off these past few weeks. It's kind of helped fuel, or maybe because of, it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing, but Tyler Lockett has seen less than a 10% target rate in 3 straight games. So that's been kind of what's fueling this breakout for JSN, and he's just really good. So back-to-back massive games. Last week he saw 11 targets, 10 catches for 110 yards. They're finally giving him some design rush attempts, so that's good to see as well. But I think he's ready for takeoff. He's, a mid-range wide receiver 2 right now and going forward. So just, we get to see him have his true breakout I felt was coming for some time now. And the other guy I'm high on is Jaden Reed. He's my wide receiver 12 to open the week. Coming off a pretty down week, at least usage-wise. He still caught a touchdown, but only 2 catches for 23 yards. Had a season low 60% routes run rate, which is really the knock with Reed. He's never really going to be a full-time player. Plus, the Packers, all their wide receivers are healthy right now. So probably going to see a little bit less playing time than usual from him. But when it comes to these games where the Packers could be in a trailing game script or losing game script, that's really when Reed thrives. That's when he's going to see the most playing time, the most targets. So in all 3 losses this year for the Packers, he's cleared 110 receiving yards. So the fact that, the Packers are 5-point dogs right now bodes well for his upside. So I think he's a player where, you might be kind of disappointed his week last week, but I am treating him like a low-end wide receiver 1 this week. I think he's going to bounce back with a big game here.
Wait, the Packers are 5-point dogs? I thought they were 2.5 point favorites. They're favored by 2.5, bro. They're
2.5.
Purdy is questionable.
Yeah,
I mean, I think he's going to play, but yeah, the Packers are at home too. They're favored.
Forgot what I was looking there. Either way, this is a game where if they get trailing, that'll help. So I was looking at something different. Either way, 49ers are a good opponent that will push Jaden Reed into more playing time, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, he plays in all 1-1 personnel. It's just some weeks, if you're in a certain type of situation where you're going with the 2 tight ends, but even that's not as likely because you don't have Musgrave. It doesn't look like he's coming back anytime soon. So you still have Ben Sims as the number 2 tight end. I think last week was just kind of an odd week because Christian Watson had so many big plays that they didn't need to throw that much. So Jordan Love only had, 17 attempts or something like that. His Jared Goff kind of stat line there. So if you only have so many plays, it's going to distort the numbers a little bit. So yes, he had a 60% routes run rate, but that's not the same as the 60% routes run rate if you have like 70, 80 plays and you just were not getting put on the field in 1-1 personnel. That would be different. But he's playing the snaps that we need him to play. So I think he's in a good spot each and every week because he's explosive and he's getting deep targets. Kind of reminds me of when Victor Cruz used to play in the slot for the Giants, but he used to get a few deep targets every game. Like Jaden Reed is getting a ton of deep targets. He's near the league lead in that category. So that always helps with if you're going to not be a completely full-time player.
Yeah, I was looking at the Vikings-Bears spread.
So you're in my Packers-Bears last week. And
yeah. Like I don't know about you. My brain is fried this time of year. I tweeted out because I had that Texans defensive touchdown in my parlay, and I kept calling it a pick 6 all day, and it was a sack, fumble, recovered 6. I just called it a pick 6. When someone was picking on me, I'm like, look, my brain is fried right now. I was calling defensive touchdown pick 6 all day, just short term. So I apologize. But yeah, the Packers are obviously favored by a couple points at home against the Niners. But I do have them projected to trail at a 7% higher rate than expected on the season. So that's kind of what I was getting at with more likely a trailing game script than not from what they're used to.
Well, yeah, because the 49ers are a competent offense, and Jordan Love pretty much gives away 7 points every week somehow. Every week it seems like he's throwing or turning it over in some new crazy way. But I like Ladd McConkey this week.
Nice. At
wide receiver, coming off the big game, 123 yards against the Cincinnati Bengals. Another primetime spot for him against Baltimore. Baltimore defense allowing the most yards, most touchdowns, and most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Mentioned Justin Herbert and the Chargers throwing more. Their pass rate above expectation is way up. Really since about week coming off that bye in week, I think it was 5 or 6. So this is a great spot for him. Baltimore does like to play some man cover. They got some talented guys, but they've still been giving up numbers. But even if he finds a Marlon Humphrey on him or a Hamilton, in terms of yards per route against man coverage, there are A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, and then Ladd McConkey at number 4 in yards per route. Those 4 guys are the only 4 that average over 4 yards per route, according to PFF. So Ladd McConkey already in the midst of his breakout this year. I know we both liked him before the season starts as a kind of the Charger receiver to own over for the long term, and he's paid that off very well over his last 7 games, averaging 4.7 catches, 72 yards. He scored 3 touchdowns. His last 5 games, he's got 5 or more receptions in 4 of those 5 games. So he's getting a lot of volume, and this is a spot where, unlike pretty much every Charger game except the Bengals last week, this is a game where you expect the Chargers to have to throw, not just do it because they want to up their pass rate because guys are healthy. This is a game with this Baltimore offense. They've been putting up points every single week, except, against the Steelers, which kind of expected if you follow that series, just going back, divisional matchup. It's always low scoring and close between those two. But this Baltimore offense still top of the league, and this Baltimore pass defense still bottom of the league. So love some Ladd McConkey this week. He is my wide receiver 11. He's ECR wide receiver 22. So I'm guessing that's going to go up, but he's a wide receiver 1 this week.
Yep. I'm with you. He's my wide receiver 9. ECR is crazy right now.
All right. Who you low on? I mentioned, I think to you in another pod that, last week I ended up low on all the Commander receivers. I think you're going to try to keep that going.
Yeah, same. I was low on Terry McLaurin. I thought about bringing him up on our pod last week. I decided not to because he had either 95 yards or 2 touchdowns in 6 straight games, so it didn't want to look
more
like
reason to bring him up.
Right,
People
right.
already know.
So sure enough, 1 catch for 10 yards. Obviously, I think he's going to bounce back here with a squeaky wheel game. They don't want to get him, pissed off and have another dud here. But his ECR is wide receiver 8. I just can't get there unless you just manly give him, 5 catches for 6 yards and a touchdown. But I don't do that. This is a game against the Cowboys where if he doesn't get his early, he might not get it. I agree with you. I'm high on Brian Robinson Jr. I think this is going to be a big Brian Robinson Jr. game. Maybe, I don't know, we see Jaden Daniels start to run again. That's going to take away from Terry. So this is a game where he just might not see a ton of volume. He could still, post big numbers with just a few targets. But, as I mentioned, Cliff Kingsbury offensive has typically trended down this time of year. So I don't know if it's just the scheme, opposing defenses can just like pick it apart this time of year or what's going on. But it's definitely a concern. And I would say Terry's still a must start this week. I'm a bit lower on him. He's like a low end wide receiver 2. And we really haven't seen a dud from him all season, but I think I wouldn't be shocked if we do see, 1 or 2 more duds the rest of the way, at least more than we've seen to date. So I just think he has a wider range of outcomes than people realize. Still think he has a massive ceiling, but I'm just a little bit lower on him than ECR again this week.
Yeah, you said you have him as a low-end wide receiver 2. I have him wide receiver 13, so I'm not at wide receiver 8, but I'm right there. What I'm hearing is that they want to get Daniels going this week too. So I think they'll build the lead with Daniels, and then Robinson will kind of be the guy. You'll probably see some McNichols. Eckler's kind of the guy I would worry about the most, but I'd be a little worried about fading Terry just because he is so obviously like the face of this pass offense outside of Daniels that. I don't think, for example, that they're looking to say, oh, we got to get Noah Brown going, So if there's a guy that they get going, it's going to be Terry. So he'll probably find a way to catch 6 balls on a 63% route rate, the huge. Yeah, I agree. His snaps haven't been that consistent wide receiver 1 level either. He's been around in the 70% in snap rates most week as well. So there are a lot of things kind of projection wise that give him a lower floor. So I do see where you're coming from though, but I just have no faith in this Dallas defense.
Right. Neither do I. That's why fade's a strong word. You still got to play him if you have him, but don't be shocked if he has a lower floor than he's shown so far. And I wouldn't fade him in receiving yards, but if they offer a 4.5 reception prop, that's the area I think I would fade him. I could see him having, 4 catches for 80 yards, something like that. But it's hard to see too much volume in this matchup.
All right, let's go to the guy I'm low on, and that's another guy in this Pittsburgh-Cleveland game. Now, this one is not as much about just the weather. I just think the whole situation, it was bound for some regression. We're starting to see it already. That's Cedric Tillman going up against the Steelers. So he cooled off last week with a 3-catch, 47-yard game, which, compared to what Judy did, compared to what Elijah Moore did, and even Njoku, wasn't much. But you look at Pittsburgh, and they are number 2 in DVOA defending passes to the offensive left, which is where Tillman lines up on the majority of his routes. It's usually where you see Joey Porter Jr., Minkah Fitzpatrick over there. So this is a tough matchup. And then the weather just kind of compounds it because, you might not get to be as reckless as usual if you're Jameis, because it might not be as, kind of shootout atmosphere like they had indoors against the Saints last week. This is an outdoor game. The Steelers pride themselves on defense. They're probably not going to give up a huge number and probably aren't going to score a huge number either. I could see this game script going a lot like the Ravens Steelers game last week, where the Ravens were on this roll going over every total, and then it's just a 18-16 game or whatever the final score was in that one. So I think, Tillman got people a bunch of good weeks with Jameis. He may have some more going forward, but against the Steelers in a divisional matchup, it's just not the time you want to be rostering opposing wide receivers, especially on a Thursday night game with a total of 36. So not really feeling the passing games, but don't like the matchup either for Tillman. So he's inside. He's a ECR wide receiver 26, which I get, because that's kind of he's popped up to that point based on a couple of big weeks, but he's my wide receiver 39. He's barely cracking the top 40 for this matchup. All right, let's see where we going for the prop. All right, let's go with a guy that I always have trouble projecting. We've talked about him. I know he's probably still in a lot of people's start-sit conundrums. That's Calvin Ridley. He's been just a maddening player all year. Then he kind of gave us some hope with a 2-touchdown game a couple of weeks ago. But I'm pretty low on him again this week. So I'm curious to see where you have him against the Houston Texans, which gave up a pretty good game to CeeDee Lamb coming over injury. So there's definitely some potential here, but Nick Westbrook-Akina can't go for a 98-yard touchdown if he wants to kind of maximize. So I'm going to set his receiving yardage line at 60.5.
That's a good line. He did have that 50-yard touchdown called back. And yeah, the Texans defense did give up a ton of yards, but typically they're very good at, preventing separation, completion percentage. So this is a tough matchup where I would take Ridley's under his receptions, but yards is always tougher. So I agree. It's a good line. I'm gonna have to go under here, but barely.
Yeah, it is higher than I would have said it. I have it.
Yeah.
In the mid 50s, but I figured it'd be a little higher on him because you knew he got a touchdown going back and everything. But yeah, it's been a frustrating year if you have Calvin Ridley on your fantasy team. You just never know what you're getting out of the quarterback position, and it's just been up and down. All right, let's go to tight end, and no Taysom Hill this week, unfortunately for everyone who picked him up. But we do have 26 teams playing. So who are your top 5 for week 12?
I got Travis Kelce, Brock Bowers, Cade Otton, Trey McBride, and George Kittle.
Yeah, same guys for me, just slightly different order. I got Kelce, Bowers, McBride, Kittle, Otton. Obviously, monitor Kittle's status. He missed last week, but is expected to return this week. I believe he's slated to practice on Wednesday, so should be good to go. But like you said, Kyle Shanahan, you never know with some of the injuries. So do monitor that one. But who are you high on, Kerner, at tight end for week 12?
Maybe they should ask Jordan Mason if
Right.
injury report. Well, the guy that just missed my top 5, Jonnu Smith, is who I'm high on. He's my tight end 6. He's had really good, underlying usage lately. He's looked great. You talked about that on the waivers pod last week. 6 catches, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. Almost as importantly, a season high 92% routes run rate. He's now seen a 20% or higher target rate in 7 straight games. Everyone's trying to figure out why, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle continue to underperform. It's because there's a legit number 3 target in this offense in Jonnu Smith. And, Devon Achane's getting his targets as well. So it's just a more spread out offense, and Jonnu Smith has looked really good. He's thriving in this offense. So assuming, this usage sticks and Tua stays healthy, he's going to be a tight end 1 the rest of the way. But this week specifically, he's in the mid-range tight end 1 discussion. And, it's a revenge game against the Patriots. So I think he's going to keep it rolling this week. And, kudos if you're able to pick him up last week or a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he's looking excellent out there. And he's one of the few tight ends that's capable of doing wide receiver things. And he's, like Mike Gesicki, I think was more of a flash in the pan while T. Higgins was out. They were just using him in a different way. But the fact that Jonnu Smith has been able to maintain a high target per route rate and be as productive as he has with the kind of ceiling games that he's had with Tyreek Hill on the field and with Jalen Waddle on the field and with Devon Achane on the field, that is promising for him to keep it up compared to a guy like Gesicki, who I think, now that T. Higgins is back, you're not really going to hear too much, about him because his role just completely changes. So, yeah, like Jonnu a lot, just going forward for the rest of the season at this point. For me, a couple of guys I'll mention. It's kind of a weird week after the top 5. It, again, kind of feels like there's no one you have like true confidence in the 6 through 12 range, but there's all these guys that they're kind of more like low end tight end 1s, but it's a weird week. So my tight end 7 and 8, Hunter Henry and Dallas Goedert. Henry is going against the Miami defense that is dead last in DVOA to tight ends. They have given up just massive numbers to the last few tight ends they faced. Of course, Bauer set the tight end catch record last week against them, but they've just been given up catches, yards, touchdowns, overall 36 catches for 341 yards, 2 touchdowns in their last 4 games alone to opposing tight ends. So like the matchup for him. And then Goddard against the Rams. This is a team that is number 24 in DVOA against the tight end. They're zone heavy, so should be a good matchup. Now, a little riskier only because Philadelphia is going to first and foremost try to run the ball. But Goddard, when they do pass, he pass blocks just 1.6% of the time. He was a little banged up, so the long layoff should help him approach 100% snap rate, which usually translates to a route run about 85 to 90% of the time. He's been more in that 70-ish% range over the last couple of games. And he's averaging almost at his career high in yards per route, 2.2 this season, a couple tenths of a point off. It'll be only the second time he averaged over 2 in a season. And in his last 4 non-injured games, averaging 6 catches for 79.5 yards. He's gotten to the end zone as well. And some of it was due to maybe there were like Devontae Smith was missing some time and AJ Brown was missing some time, but also you got to remember this is a new scheme. So it's not, I don't think it was just those factors kind of contributing to Goddard putting up some good numbers. I think the scheme change has done him some good, and Jalen Hurts is able to find him more and through his progressions and whatnot. So I like Goddard as a kind of an underrated tight end with a massive ceiling in this spot because the Rams have been shaky against tight ends. This is another high total game, and we always expect Jalen Hurts to get like those 2 tush-push touchdowns every game, but there's some variance to that. Anytime he doesn't get one, it kind of opens it up for all these receivers that you kind of overlook a little bit because you also got AJ Brown always in the top 5, and then your mind goes to Devontae Smith next. So I think Goddard is a guy who's really overlooked. But what helps him a lot too is Jahan Dotson pretty much out there running wind sprints as the third wide receiver when he's out there. So it kind of condenses the target share to their top options, which Goddard is one of. All right, who you low on at tight end for week 12?
I'm low on TJ Hawkinson. He opens up as my tight end 12. And I thought, last week his playing time would only ramp up going forward as he's, getting healthier, but actually came back down last week. So it looks like, the Vikings are still being pretty careful with him and limiting his snaps for now. And Josh Oliver continued to have a pretty big role. However, Oliver did pick up an ankle injury. So, his status this week is unclear. Right now I'm projecting him to play. But if he's out, even if he's out, I think that, the Vikings probably still want to limit Hawkinson's workload. So I don't know if Oliver's status will impact that. Either way, he's still just going to be more of a low-end tight end one until we really do see him maintain that 70, 80% routes run rate that, he's capable of. That's when I think he'll return to, top 6, discussion. But as of now, we just kind of have to wait and see. Maybe we get more, reporting on like why that is. And maybe they say, okay, we're going to unleash him this week and I'll move up his rank. But as of now, like you said, there's just some really good options with Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Dallas Goedert, just ranked above him. So as of now, he's opening up the week as my tight end 12.
Yeah, there's just a lot of uncertainty there. Like my feel for it is that last week just ended up being one of those weeks where when Oliver went down, they were at a point where they were running more, so they didn't mind having Johnny Munt in for those snaps. But we did see we did see Hawkinson get to a 70% route rate. I think it was the game before. So I don't exactly know if they're like there's any like they're trying to limit him, or they wouldn't just play him if they needed to, which if like Oliver was out, for example. So I'm kind of torn as well. And then it complicates things because there's a lot of guys like that who have like there's either new guys that you're like, I don't know if I should rank like a Jonnu and a Dis, these guys like flat out above them. And then there's like the Mark Andrewses who have been good in the past, but now their situation is complicated, like Likely's return and, all the wide receivers. So there's just so many guys that I wish I could rank like tight end 12 that like one of them has to be like the tight end 7, 8. But I agree. There are a number of guys that I feel more confident in than Hawkinson. This also sets up as a run funnel matchup. Chicago is number 31 in DVOA against the run, but they're pretty good against the pass. I guess the only concern would be, if it was indeed like if Oliver sits and then it was just something to do with the running game, and now they have Hawkinson in it, and when he's in, they're just like targeting him at a high rate because Addison is also banged up. So I don't know if he's going to be 100% in this one. So there's a lot of things. So yeah, you got to, for everyone listening, keep check out our ranks later in the week because this one it's kind of touch and go right now. But I agree. I am at tight end. Yeah, I'm at tight end 11 for TJ Hawkinson. So I'm right there with you. I think he's right outside that top 10 until we get kind of more clarity on number one whether Oliver's playing, because he's actually been playing well. And I think it's a bigger reason why they haven't felt the need essentially to push Hawkinson. So if he's out, I think it helps. And then it's just a matter of seeing if O'Connell answers anything about his role, or that Munt was due more to the run blocking kind of situation. But that is gonna lead us to our tight end prop. What do you got, Kerner?
We got to go Brock Bowers. I mentioned in our league winner episode that he had league winning upside, but this is ridiculous. He's having like a hybrid of Puka Nacua and Sam Laporta rookie seasons this year. Just everything's lined up for him. 13 catches, 126 yards, and a touchdown. Got me feeling icy. God, I don't even know how to set his prop for you right now. I don't know if I could set it high enough. But I'll go with 61.5 yards. What do you got?
Oof. I hope I have over because I really don't want to be on Bowers.
No, right?
A Bowers under. That is.
I don't want you to be on the over. I want the over, but yeah, 61.5 against the Broncos.
Yeah, who a little bit of a different matchup and a tough matchup, but we saw him beat them in that first one. I think he got a little lucky. Wasn't it like a tip ball? He got a big play on in that first. Something crazy happened, I remember.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but
he had 8 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah. I think the touchdown. And he almost got a second touchdown, but Minshew got pick 6, so that's also something to keep in mind.
That was the original benching.
Yep, that was the OG benching.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go under though. Unfortunately, I have him at 58. So I have him like his catches are high in this spot, but because the Broncos defense is good, it's like I project him to be a little less efficient, so and like the whole Raider passing offense. So a lot of times that ends up raising their receptions, but their yardage, it might lower it a little. So yeah, I have him still as a tight end 2 this week. He may even be the tight end 1, depending on how, if I think there's going to be a significant risk of the Chiefs not taking this game against the Panthers too seriously, because Kelsey did see a little bit of a reduction last week. But either way, yeah, I got to go under. I hate to do it, but that was a good line.
Yeah, like I should have made it rushing and receiving yards.
Right.
I mean, he gets carries last week -3 yards, but I wonder what the hell are they going to do if Madison and Zamir White are out? Like, he could see a couple rush attempts. Maybe they pass more. There's a lot of wrinkles here where he could get even more usage if that's even possible.
Oh yeah, he's gonna be the focal point. Like, I'm just going strictly based on the numbers.
Yeah,
you can see him like a 6 catch, 52 yard, 2 touchdown type of game.
Yeah,
Broncos win 27-14 or something like that. So
boom, book
that's how it happened. And a lot of times we should mention that because you kind of alluded to it, but if you like a guy or don't like a guy, going over or under receptions and yards are not the same thing. Like, if a guy, like you mentioned it with Terry McLaurin, he could, if he goes over yards, he's probably likely to go under receptions because that means he's more efficient. He needs fewer receptions to get more yards and vice versa. So if you like or want to fade a certain player, that doesn't necessarily mean that you just bang the under on all of his props. Like with receptions and yards, there's a reason that the books kind of put those both out. And it's because there is some inverse correlation there. It's not just, correlation with the game script or the different receivers, that they're competing against in their own team. Like, there's literally, all right, if Alec Pierce catches an 80-yard touchdown, he's less likely to go over 2.5 receptions because he's got 80 yards and that drives over now. So exactly. That's something to keep in mind that I think.
And they're playing with a lead, or presumably,
exactly.
Like, it's helping the game script be more run heavy kind of thing.
Exactly. So that's something I thought I should mention because I thought that was a good point that you brought up earlier. That maybe if you're a little newer to betting props or making projections in general, you might not realize, but that's one I think that always kind of gets people in the same game parlays and stuff like that. All right. That is going to do it for us here on the Player Projections Pod for week number 12 on the Fantasy Flex. Be sure to check out fantasylabs.com for all of Sean Kerner and my fantasy football content. You can use code FLEX40 for $40 off right now. Sean is on X at @the_oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon, and we're at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Till next time, let's get this money.